My name is Jon Gartenberg, and I'm a programmer at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I focus on the films that are pretty much made outside the commercial mainstream, and that's the independent, the experimental films, focusing on New York primarily, but not exclusively. And the whole point here is that the way that the general public has access to films is mostly through a kind of mainstream industry. And yet in New York and the surrounding area and even in the world, there are many people working at the margins with cameras like this, which are basically cameras made for the home market. And often, and most often, they're coming without a ready-made script, a producer, a budget in place. It really comes from a passion. As Steve was saying, you know, it's their sensibilities, their interior sensibilities, what they feel and think and experience about the world about them. And they're not always necessarily making a straight story film. Sometimes they can play with time and space. They can deal with abstraction, but these films, in my mind, respond just as powerfully, if not more so, to the human condition. I think Native New Yorker is one such film as this. These filmmakers have such an exciting vision. They have such a powerful one in the world, and like Steve was saying, and to be able to express that, and it's a real struggle for them. Mm-hmm. You know, so Steve's the angel that can supply them with film stock, and I unfortunately have an opportunity to be able to expose some of this work and try to help get the filmmakers recognition. And I think it's just so vibrant and vital. I think we're both kind of excited about these filmmakers who work, and there's many, many of them that just aren't able to make it through that narrow funnel of what the industry allows.
It's to equate it to music. Steve Billich was saying earlier that, like a lot of us, he had trouble even accepting a compliment about his work, and because of the nature of Tribeca, because you're not categorizing, you know, it's not like the kiddie pool and the big people's pool, as I used to call it. It can thrive as art for its own sake.
Right.
And someone as great as Chopin often didn't feel comfortable enough about his work. I mean, etudes, I mean, that means studies. He never felt comfortable enough about some of his works to even name them accordingly, despite the fact that they've become some of the most beloved works of piano literature. Mm-hmm. And by creating what you've done, by really leveling the playing field and giving everyone their own expression, you do both the service to the public by exposing people to the Brussels sprouts they might not have eaten by name otherwise, you know, the green eggs and ham, and at the same time giving the filmmakers the opportunity to be a part of what they should have always been a part of, the greater film community, so they can all grow.
What's also, I think, wonderful about this film is that it very much is in the tradition of what I call the City Symphony films. And it's really quite fascinating because in the 1920s, all around the world, and this relates to what I think your interest is universally, you know, there were films like Berlin Symphony of a City by Walter Ruttmann. There was Rien que les heures, which was in France and Paris by Alberto Cavalcanti. There was Manhattan by Paul Strand and Charles Sheeler. So in a way, I think one could look at this film, Native New Yorker, coming out of that history of the City Symphony films. Mm-hmm. City Symphony films is being defined by a unity of time and place, the place being the city that's being portrayed, Paris, New York, or Berlin, and the unity of time being usually an articulation of a day from morning to evening. So I think that sort of what elevates Native New Yorker to another level also is it's very much in that tradition. I think also what's really quite incredible is you know, Steve Garfinkel and Steve Billich's conversations about these Cine Kodak cameras, because you also have those cameras coming from the 1920s, which is what Steve Billich used to film this film.